This
28th
conference will
of
now be
April,
recorded.
2022. We're convening the meeting at 7 o'clock. Thank you for turning that on, Susan. I'm required to ask you all to take a moment and reflect on where your emergency exits are. I consider that now done. And welcome any expressions of any pecuniary conflicts of interest you may have. This is for committee members, and that can be declared now or at any time during the meeting, before the individual applications are discussed. Thank you very much. We have a set of minutes in front of us from the last meeting, the 29th of March. Are there any changes, additions, omissions, errors of commission? Hearing none, I ask for someone to, I see
I'll move.
Bob raising his hand to move adoption of those minutes. Seconder,
I'll
please.
second it. I will, Brenda.
Brenda has seconded that. Thank you very much. Consider that done. We have in front of us an agenda for tonight's meeting, and I just ask for any additions or any notifications of error before going on to look for a motion of approval of the agenda that's in front of us tonight. Motion to adopt the agenda by Corinne, seconded by Jerry.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So we have two applications in front of us this evening. The first is let me just get this right. Application number B03-22. And I would do with an easement, to cover a shared driveway on two adjacent properties. I would ask Mr. Trotman to make any comments he wishes to, and knowing that we've all had a chance to look at the survey, the detailed survey, I might add, and the submissions, the report, and the planning report. Mr. Trotman.
Thank you, Chair Riley. So this application, these are common. They provide for vehicle access to an abutting property through shared driveway. You see this across a rural area, even urban areas, and particularly in cottage country areas. So not uncommon by any measure. I've dealt with these many, many times before. This property though was in the NEC, or excuse me, the NEP, Niagara Escarpment Plan. However, the applicant's planning consultant, Ellen Ferris at MHBC, of course, has done her due diligence to review this with NEC and determine whether or not an NEC permit was required. Now, according to the information we have, as cited in my background first section, they said no, they don't deal with these. It is essentially a bit of a technical exercise to apply an easement where there's an existing driveway to continue shared access. So that doesn't surprise me at all, didn't surprise me at all. I think my report's fairly straightforward. There are some conditions that I've attached, of course. And the only other aspect would be whether the applicant wishes to, and probably would, I'm sure, wanting to register this against title in order to ensure its perpetuity. I mean, with that, I think you could probably turn it over to Ms. Ellen Ferris, who's the planning consultant for the applicants.
All right, let's ask Ms. Ferris. I would encourage you, I think this is a relatively straightforward matter, unless committee members correct me later otherwise. But so I invite you to make brief remarks.
Can't hear.
Your mic is not working, and even though it shows green on our screen, you're remarkably lip syncing at this particular point.
That'll make Ellen's presentation even shorter.
Well, yes. I mean, we could proceed with questions of Mr. Trotman and discussion by the committee. And I would welcome you, Ellen, in the absence of voice. If you hear anything that's egregious, wave, and we will try to understand your concern. Otherwise, we may get through this in a rather uneventful manner to everyone's satisfaction. Is that all right with you, Harris? Yes, I take that as a nod.
I can't hear Ellen. I don't know if she wants to sign out and sign back in again to try.
That usually works. I was just going to suggest the same thing.
Well, let me instead invite committee members to make any comments or ask any details of Mr. Trotman on this particular item. And then if something comes up that's particularly meddlesome, we will take the pause to see if Ms. Ferris can reset her connection. But this may be a quicker way through this proposal. Let's start with Brenda. Do you have any comments or questions on this application?
I don't have any questions. I agree with staff, with David. I support this application with all of the conditions.
Thank you very much. Jerry Reed?
Yes, I support it. I think it's pretty straightforward. And it makes sense. Makes sense to do that at this time.
Very good. Corinne Pollard?
I also have no questions and would also support the application.
Bob McRae?
And the same. Completely support this. And John, after you talk, I'm happy to move that we approve this with the conditions that Dave Trotman has put down there. So no problem.
I will only offer that I had an enjoyable drive about and checked out this easement location, and it seems like a most efficient and economic way to proceed and give assurances to both landowners of how access to their properties will proceed in the future. So with that said, one more comment to be offered here by Mr. Trotman. Yes?
If I may, Chair Riley, just clarify again that condition 2 that requires the survey, that will form the basis for registration against title in perpetuity. So that information came more recently from Ms. Ferris that it is indeed in perpetuity. That's the whole purpose of having a consent under Section 50, and that would be done to provide future owners with the availability of continue to use the easement and get access through it. That's standard. It's at the applicant's sole cost, and that would be done after the survey or condition 2 is brought forward to the town, just so you know.
And so I take this to be a relatively straightforward survey in as much as you've got the present survey as the basis for it, and it's fairly clear and hopefully an inexpensive matter. But I think it's clear in your condition that is the case and a requirement of this approval. So with that being said, we have the recommendation in the staff report on page 4 and the conditions on page 5. And I ask for a motion of approval.
I'm happy to move that we approve this.
Moved by Bob McRae, seconded by Corinne Pollard. All those in favor? Seeing all in favor. Thank you very much, Ms. Ferris, for taking part in the meeting. And next time, perhaps we'll be on some vehicle other than GoTo meeting, and it'll go a little more smoothly. But we live in hope. All right. That done, shall we turn ourselves to the second application, number B0222 and B0918. The applicant, the Campbells, and acting on their behalf, James Diamond. And we've got quite a bit of material that we've been presented and we've gone through. I'm sure a number of us have made site visits, and I would just introduce this because I've seen the correspondence this afternoon on this matter and I stand to be corrected on this, but the application in front of us deals essentially with the matters germane to the Town of Mono official plan, and those matters to do with siting of driveway, building, and septic system, and adjustment of a property line. So those are on-property matters that are covered, and those matters are covered by the Town of Mono official plan. Among the conditions that are additionally attached is one dealing with a request for an agreement between the applicants and the town regarding the off-property public land matter of of possible improvements to the road allowance itself. So, and this, I understand from the correspondence, is not an agreeable condition of this proposed set of conditions. But there may be a way through this, or there's a choice of ways to go through this. I think one of those would be that because the Committee of Adjustment, we can deal with the matters pertaining to the on-property applications for the adjustment of the property line and the siting of building, septic, and driveway. But we're not really, it's not part of our job to deal with the matters concerning the municipal right-of-way. We don't give approvals for, and we have no application in front of us dealing with that. So if it was the group's decision, and including in the group both town staff and the applicants and consultants, to defer the matter until some resolution can be dealt with by the town staff and the applicant regarding this matter to do with the adjacent municipal property, then that's one way of approaching it. An alternative approach is that we deal with those matters that we initially looked at when we were dealing with all the application materials to on-site activities and proposals and communicate by means of what I would call maybe a conditional approval, whether or not the Committee of Adjustment supports those matters that the applicant has brought forward that are within the purview of the Committee of Adjustment. If people follow what I'm saying on this, is we may or may not have any resolution in sight on the matter of the matters to dealing with the municipal road allowance, but we do also have all the matters to be dealt with regarding the on-site application. Can I ask you to comment on that, Mr. Trotman, as whether or not these are two options that we should ask, I think, the applicant and staff whether or not their guidance on?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Riley. The answer is, I think, yes for both. I suspect, though, and I say this objectively, probably the preferable one at this point would be deferral. Notwithstanding the road works matters, NVCA reached us about asking deferral in order to get some of their specialists in-house to provide further commentary. So that came in today, I believe. I think that got sent forward to committee. So NVCA has asked for a deferral as well. I suspect that's probably the preferable way to go rather than weighing in at this right now. Get that further information from NVCA. They did weigh in on the stream crossing matter from a year or 2 years ago, but they're still asking for information on the application at hand. That's not unusual at times. And of course, there remains the matter of the cul-de-sac. I would think it preferable for committee, however they want to make their decision, but if my recommendation would be to defer.
Could I ask the applicant and or the applicant's representative to help us puzzle our way through this conundrum?
Certainly, if I can, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, others attending the meeting. My name is Jim Diamond, and I am the planning consultant for the Campbells, originally for the Delorier, who was the original owner of the property. I prepared a fairly detailed presentation for you tonight to talk to you about issues that have come up. I wanted to start off by giving you a little bit of background and telling you that I've been doing planning work in the township of Mono since 1982, when I was the planner for the township of Mono for the Niagara Escarpment Commission. And so I'm pretty familiar with the township, and I've been around it my entire life. When I was first retained on this property, it was owned by Delorier, and they had 200 acres, and they said, do you think we can split it back to the original hundreds? I said, no problem. And that was 4 years ago. We've been working with the Conservation Authority through that period of time to try to resolve all the issues they had. And today we received a copy of correspondence from them backtracking over 3 years of work that we've done on the project. I'm wondering, and I'll ask for the committee's direction. There's a couple of matters that I'd like to speak to tonight, if I can, just to sort the record straight on a few issues that Mr. Trotman has pointed out to us yesterday and today. And I'd like to also start off by saying the issue of the road is a matter of language, and it could be greatly simplified. We have had a wonderful time dealing with Michael Dunmore on the road issues. He's been great. He's been out to the property a bunch of times, and I know that we can resolve the issues if we just simply find the right language that requires an agreement related to what the road improvements are. But the condition that is written in your staff report requires my clients to pay for the construction of a cul-de-sac on a municipal road, the entire cost, the cost of designing it, constructing it, supervision of construction, the land and dedication of the finished roadway to the municipality, which is a $60,000 expense in return for the creation of one lot. And so we have concerns about that. The issue of deferral may give us an opportunity to word the condition in a manner that will allow us to speak to council and continue to work with your Director of Public Works and Planner to come up with the right language for that sort of decision. I also wanted to note that I know there have been issues Mr. Trotman brought to our attention about the issue of tree cutting on the property. And I want to assure members of the committee that we obtained a permit from the Conservation Authority last year for a tree cutting prescription on the property. And the tree cutting on the property is moving along exactly in accordance with the prescription that was approved by the Conservation Authority and issued. They issued a permit for that cutting. And it may seem drastic if you're not familiar with the prescription. If I can share my screen, I can show you what's going on the property and how that relates to the permit that was issued by the Conservation Authority.
Well, before we go on to that, Mr. Diamond, can I just ask you whether or not you think that we are going to be able to resolve the wording that has been recommended by the Director of Public Works and Town Planner, and the wording that you would prefer regarding the cul-de-sac on the municipal road allowance? Are we going to resolve that this evening online? I'm an optimist, but I'm not sure my optimism extends to that extent. The reason is that I think it would be good to try to lay that one to rest as to what we're going to do. But I do agree with you that we should also then have some discussion about this more apparently time-sensitive matter regarding comments that may have come in from the public about the tree cutting. So what do you think? Are we going to really resolve the matter of this proposed cul-de-sac? I'm asking this because this is not a matter where the chair of a committee of adjustment should comment on it one way or another. Because I could give you comments as a long-standing, resident ratepayer of Mono privately, but in my role as the committee of adjustment chair, this really, it's not one of the matters that's in front of us for our discussion, really.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there is an easy resolution to it, whether the committee has the appetite tonight to deal with it or not. I will say that if you refer to the letter that Mr. Dunmore prepared with respect to the consent application, I'm just going to check my notes. So I'm looking at a PowerPoint that I've done that I won't show you, but so the letter from the Public Works Director said in his first recommended condition that the applicant shall enter into a roadworks agreement with the town to be registered against the title of the subject property for all design and installation of works of ditching and cul-de-sac on the 7th line, such that the owner understands and agrees in writing that all costs associated with this roadworks agreement shall be borne by the applicant. So that's very simple. It says we need to do an agreement to the satisfaction of the municipality regarding the ditching and cul-de-sac works on the road, and that the applicant is responsible for all the costs associated with that agreement. Perfect. No problem with that at all. But the condition that's in the staff report, condition number 2, says that the owners understand and agree in writing that they shall execute a roadworks agreement with the town for the design, construction of works, and the cost for the installation of the cul-de-sac at the end of line 7, all to the satisfaction of the Public Works, including further matters as cited in the Public Works. So that condition alludes to the applicant having to pay the costs for the installation of the cul-de-sac rather than pay the cost for the agreement related to the works that are associated. So I like Mike's letter. I like his condition, and if you substituted that for the condition in the staff report, I think we're good to go on the conditions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Diamond. So I should ask Mr. Trotman and Mr. Dunmore to indicate if they similarly see that there is some variation between what Mr. Dunmore communicated or is interpreted to have been communicated to Mr. Diamond, and what's the condition in the staff report as it's been tabled with us.
I'll defer to Mr. Dunmore's request or requirement on this one, Chair Riley. If he
Mr.
cares to
Dunmore?
speak.
Thank you, John. I think there may be a little bit of wordsmithing here on Mr. Diamond's behalf. The roadworks agreement shall enter into the roadworks agreement for all design and installation works. And then I do note that in support of what Jim's saying is that the cost of the roadworks agreement shall be borne by the applicant, but the intent is the interpretation by the town planner. And the residents of the town of Mono should not be on the hook for corrective actions to a road allowance for the approval of a consent by the applicant. And that's the intent of the roadworks agreement. And the installation works would be borne by the applicant.
So could you clarify just for me, Mr. Dunmore, the roadway is there, the road allowance is there. There is an existing access point. I'm not quite clear how it got from where it is now to the need for an expanded cul-de-sac at the applicant's cost, I guess.
So the existing access point is under a temporary entrance permit, and that will be removed and revoked on June the 30th of this year. It was facilitated for a logging permit only, which was supported by the MVCA approval for the logging, for the forest management plan. The specifications or standards for our temporary entrances are just that. They're temporary. They're not meant to be permanent. And all reviews and processes are generally less than of a full-time 365 24/7 access point. If the entrance or the ditching isn't adequate, and it washes out during a flood or spring melt or whatever it may be, then the only encumbrance is for the logging group, in which they would be charged with rectifying their access point if they wanted to continue to use a temporary. The biggest difference on a full-time residential entrance is ingress and egress of not only the residents, but fire and emergency services. And also the insurance that the traveled roadway can facilitate this 365 days a year ingress and egress. So while there is a temporary access point, it shouldn't be construed as a permanent entrance. And one of the big things too with a permanent entrance, after the applicant installs it, it would all costs and ownership would be borne by the town. We take possession of the infrastructure. Right now, the infrastructure there is for the applicant's temporary use only. So with our full-time residential access permits, there have been, ditching is not a new condition of installation. However, as noted in my report, I have strong concerns with respect to year-round access being enabled with the current condition of the roadway, which is substandard to all town standards right now.
That clarifies things very adequately, Mr. Dunmore. That's appreciated. And so what I'm hearing is the disagreement between the Director of Public Works and staff around this agreement still persists. And Mr. Diamond, your interpretation of or your idea of how to amend that wording is not acceptable to the town staff. So that brings us back to the point of, I think Mr. Trotman raised, which is, do we defer the matter until staff and applicant can have more satisfactory discussion, a resolution of that? I'll ask Mr. Diamond to comment on that. Mr. Diamond.
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, I'm always in favor of talking, and happy to continue our conversations with the municipality regarding the wording of that agreement. I think it would be helpful for all. It's like a good fence and good neighbors, and so I don't have any concern about that. And second, as Mr. Trotman mentioned, we received a letter from the Conservation Authority this afternoon that is 180 degrees from the correspondence we received from the Conservation Authority in January of this year related to the consent. I have a copy of the email from the planner from the Conservation Authority saying no problem. And as soon as I get my report done, you'll have it and proceed. And then today we got a letter from the Conservation Authority saying, well, there's some new issues. So having worked with one person from the Conservation Authority for 3 years and getting a letter from somebody else from the Conservation Authority, I think we need to do a little bit of consultation with them to make sure that they understand the history of this file as well. So we can come back to the committee with a clean slate, conditions we all agree with, and have a 5-minute meeting.
Very good. Well, let's take that as the way forward, but I will ask each committee member individually to ask for any further clarification they may wish, and to offer Mr. Diamond and the applicant any particular advice that they wish to, knowing that there will be discussions that follow and probably a reworking of conditions one way or another before it comes back to us at a later meeting. So with that in mind, could I ask, could I start with you, Mr. Jerry Reed? Do you have any questions or advice that you may wish to offer?
No, I would think it has to be deferred at this point in time, but I have some concerns. One concern I have is that the Conservation Authority would wait till the night of the meeting and give us that report. Like they've got staff that you wouldn't hardly believe, or maybe you would believe, on these places, and I expect that. And I also saw Mr. Diamond's earlier reports, and I don't see why we would wait till the 28th in the afternoon to send that kind of an email to anybody in front of a committee. That's one thing. The other thing that I'm a little bit concerned about, or confused about more than concerned about, is so that 7th line, are we asking the applicant to rebuild the road all the way up from that last lot line to his new entranceway to the cul-de-sac?
Yeah.
Pardon me?
And somewhat beyond to accommodate a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, there's somewhat of a cul-de-sac there, I guess, but anyway. But I guess I'm saying that that roadway is an easement, and I think, yeah, I can see that. I agree with Mr. Dunmore about the entranceway and the temporary one thing and another. But I think also we have a somewhat of an obligation as a municipality, if it's approved, to get the roadway as far as his driveway, and then yes, it would have to be made to as a permanent entrance. And I agree with whatever has to happen at that point in time. But I'm confused as to whether are we asking to rebuild that whole piece of road, and don't need the answer now because I would say it's got to be deferred at this point in time. But I think we should take a look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry. I'd appreciate that because, in fact, I haven't caught up completely with the correspondence from the NVCA this afternoon. I mean, it must have been quite late in the afternoon for me to have missed it, or it didn't get through to me because of the idiosyncrasies of the internet. So that being said, could I ask Brenda if there's any advice or comments you may wish to offer at this point?
No, I agree. It should be deferred until we have further knowledge and wording and everything precise.
Corinne, comments or advice?
No, I certainly have no advice because I certainly would not want to be held to advice other than I do agree with some of Jerry's concerns with regards to clarity on what it is exactly we're asking the applicant to do and what our obligation should be to bring the road to, you know, proper condition. But I think some clarity, et cetera, needs to come with regards to what it is exactly we'll be looking at and what our obligation as a township is versus what their obligation is in terms of what we expect them to do and the costs, et cetera, obviously to be borne by them, obviously not to be answered now. But I have no comments other than I agree with regards to hoping that they can come to some economic decision on their own and bring a neat package forward to the committee.
Thank you. Mr. McCray?
First off, let me say, in principle, I do support this whole concept of severing this lot off. Absolutely. But this should have been brought to us with all agreements with, and I will say, the town of Mono, as our mayor pointed out to somebody recently, a township, the ship sailed years ago. So this needs to be deferred. It needs to be negotiated with the town and the owners and brought back to us as something that everybody can live with but before we see it again. When that happens, then I'm going to be happy to support it because this is a good way for us to accommodate new growth. I was going to bring this up with other business, but since Jerry brought it up already, I was going to bring it up about the fact of getting new information the day of the meeting. I saw it, I'm looking at it right now here, Amy Knapp or Knapp, dated this morning at 9:29 a.m. I don't know when Nottawasaga got this, but as far as I'm concerned, it is totally unacceptable that we're getting this information the morning of our meeting, and somebody needs to let them know that. And if they can't get it to us and to the public, this should be. Here's the thing, the public needs to know these things as well. It should be at minimum a week before our meeting, if not longer than that. So that I'm not happy with. And then no disrespect, Jim, we got Jim's email this afternoon about the problem with the owner paying the whole cost of the cul-de-sac. So again, these things have to be sorted out long before we're sitting here on GoToMeeting, and that once I don't want to see this again, quite frankly, and I'm sure we're all in agreement, until everybody agrees to everything and we've got a complete package. And when that comes back, I'll be happy to move the approval of the lot severance. So.
In fairness to Susan,
Let's take that under advisement, Bob, and
Yep.
and punt it over to Mr. Trotman and Susan to give us guidance at the next meeting about what standard they want to meet in this regard, because it is not just this meeting, but probably 75% of our meetings over the course of the last couple years have had material walked on the agenda essentially the afternoon of the meeting. And it really is unnerving if you're not quivering over your digital devices. So, and even
John,
the other thing,
it's totally unacceptable. We're volunteers. Jerry could have been out on a tractor in a field.
Message received, Bob. Jerry, you wanted to add something?
I was just going to say, in fairness to Susan, that letter that came from Conservation Authority this morning was 9:29. Bob's correct, but Susan sent it out at 9:43. It came to me, so
Yeah,
she was doing the
I
best.
think the matter is a technical matter of just setting an arbitrary time and saying, after that, nothing more is going to be shared. Is either part of the package or it's not part of the package. So let's accept that as a procedural adjustment and go forward on that, and not lay any attribute any blame or shortcomings to anybody in this regard. We're just trying to do our best here. Now, if I could add one, I also, as Bob suggested, agree with this severance and with the general placement of the building and the septic system. But in this regard, I do have an additional comment. Just by way of introduction, I would, at a very high level, say that, the most important natural heritage features on the said property, without a doubt, are the Sheldon Creek and its associated forested slopes and forested top of bank. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Sheldon Creek is an absolute gem in the Nottawasaga Valley system, which we tend to forget is the finest, best quality, and most productive salmon fishery in the entire Great Lakes region. So let's keep our eye on the really important things on this site, which I think are known to the applicant, and hopefully treasured by through the private stewardship of the owner and applicant. But I just wanted to draw your attention to the scoped environmental impact statement for this particular consent application. It is very clear in supporting the applicant's proposal for the locations of a building, septic, and a driveway, if, and I underline, if certain conditions are met. Now, two of these conditions are the basis for what I would offer Mr. Diamond and the committee and staff as a possible additional condition to be added to the long list of conditions already tabled. Page 6 of the applicant's EIS addresses tree clearing and driveway placement. More specifically, quote, to minimize the removal of trees, an alternative location for the driveway access should be considered. The alternative route for the driveway is in a previously disturbed area, i.e. the remains of the former farmstead and barn. This route alternative avoids placing the driveway along the top of bank of the Sheldon tributary and avoids areas with denser cedar growth, unquote. Additionally, the EIS's conclusion on page 9 of the EIS states that a condition of the report of its support is, quote, a grassed ditch or bioswale along the edge of the driveway to polish, filter runoff before it outlets to the Sheldon tributary, unquote. So on the basis of the applicant's own EIS and on the basis of a site inspection in the last week, it seems pretty evident that the driveway alignment and the tree clearing that's gone on to sort of set the stage for the driveway alignment has not been in conformity with the EIS. And as a result, the EIS's support for the application on which this application is based is not accepted as it relates to the tree clearing and driveway design and location. So on this basis, I would recommend the addition of an additional condition and hope that this might be considered by the applicant. Staff have this already from me and could easily be shared with Mr. Diamond and through Mr. Diamond to the applicants. Goes something along the lines of this: that the owners understand and agree in writing, one, to reconfigure the driveway alignment to the satisfaction of the town, specifically to reroute the driveway farther south as per the owner's EIS, page 7, tree clearing section, and two, to restore the deeply rutted driveway access route that currently infringes the organic soils of the cedar forest close to and at the top of bank of Sheldon Creek, and that this work be completed to the satisfaction of the town prior to any issuance of OBC permit approvals. So this is a way of encouraging the applicants to consider the driveway alignment carefully enough to gain sufficient elevation quickly enough to get into those cherished hawthorn thickets where they're going to build and reside for the foreseeable future, with minimum impact on what can only be described as the much more significant conifer forest stands on the north-facing slope and the top of bank area along Sheldon Creek. I apologize for that little addition to the list of possible conditions, but I'll invite Mr. Diamond to comment on that and all of the other advice and remarks by committee members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, to address your concerns, I agree with you completely. And I think you may be confusing the logging road with the driveway. We did move the driveway location in a revised site plan after Mr. Bricker finished his EIS, and we provided a revised site plan to the township showing the driveway in the location recommended by Mr. Bricker in our revised site plan and building envelope. And we're fully prepared. I actually anticipated the requirement for a site plan agreement to locate that driveway and the building envelope on the property. And I would still support that as a mechanism to ensure that the EIS is implemented fully by the municipality. You and I are cut from the same cloth, sir.
Very good. I'm glad you accepted in the spirit. And I might add that for a member of the Committee of Adjustment who, or anybody else who wants to check on a site, which is, I might add, almost entirely within the town of Mono's natural heritage system, having some flagging up to indicate where the building site, where the septic site, or where the driveway location would have been helpful when I was inspecting the applicant's site. So next time we'll look.
Well, thank you. I can see.
I used the map, but the map is at such a fine scale that you really can't tell what it's meant.
Well, I see that Ms. Campbell is on the meeting with us, and I will commit her to providing any member of the committee with a review of the site using her side-by-side 4x4 and show you exactly where the driveway is. The driveway is in fact where the old driveway used to be on the property, and you can see it on the air photos. So the purpose of it was to minimize the impact. The old driveway did go through the cedar woodland a little bit, and that's when Mr. Bricker said, well, if we can go up through the old building site, we can avoid, you know, taking more trees out even where the old driveway was, and that's why we revised the site plan. So I agree completely.
I understand that, but as someone who really, you know, has a fondness for Mono's, you know, hills and dales and north-facing conifer forests, that alignment could have been put in by the logging equipment and the cedar cut and moved out along it with much less impact to the site and much less cost to the applicant in terms of restoration of that access route. So anyway, I'm glad you agree. And Mr. Trotman, perhaps you could forward to Mr. Diamond and the applicant that possible that recommendation to possibly add to the list of conditions going forward for our next consideration of this matter.
Yeah, I can do that. Probably I can send it initially, and I think it won't have any real change in its language. Why would it need to be? But of course, it will be added into the report, and I'll redate the report if committee chooses to defer.
But from my point of view, you could forward to him all of my remarks as shared with you and Mr. Dunmore and committee members.
Sure, I can do that. I will do that tomorrow.
Thank you very much. So with this all being chatted about, I think we're looking for a resolution to defer. Do I see a hand up? I see Corinne Pollard making a resolution to defer this matter. Seconded by
I'll second it.
Mr. Bob McCray. All those in favor of a deferral? By a show of hands, I see it's unanimous. Thank you very much, and let's figure out how to move forward to everybody's satisfaction on this file. And thank you, Mr. Diamond, for your participation in this.
Thank you, members. As always, a pleasure dealing with the town of Mono. And I apologize if I said township. It's been a long time. Thanks.
I do. I'm not gonna change. Thank you very much. So that is dealt with. I should try and see if I can find the agenda once again. And I would ask Mr. Trotman to share with Mike. Mike is tuned off. Oh no, there's Mike. Yes, Mike, did you want to say anything or just wave goodbye? Have a good evening.
Night, Mike.
Mr. Trotman, are there any active planning matters that you wish to draw to our attention just for our information going forward?
I can share with you that we've had some correspondence with the appellant's lawyer regarding the Dandex wedding venue. Can't say much more than that. That will go to the OLT, and town solicitor is preparing information further to the appeal package that the town sent in, which we're required to do. I mean, really, just a number of site plans we're trying to bring to the finish line. Sorry.
That was the application. What's it called? In on 6 or in on 9?
On 9.
On the
207, 535.
It's that one.
The fourth line. Yep. That was appealed, and so there will the tribunal has it and will be reaching out to both solicitors, the appellants and the town solicitors, to consider pre-hearing information or whatever the OLT chooses to do.
Did part of site plan. Can I ask you if part of the package that you forwarded included all of the commentary and input by neighbors, which I recollect was in the order of something like 12 different submissions. which to our committee's general way of doing business is quite a remarkable number.
Can I just say something just to clarify this, David? That was something that was with the planning committee, correct? That
It
we
was.
recommended to council to deny. It was an application for a zoning bylaw amendment. So it was the planning committee that actually saw that one. And our unanimous recommendation was to council was to deny it, which they did. And now we're into the land tribunal process.
It is a planning committee matter more so. Yes, that is true. I just let committee of adjustment know. So that's true. I mean, we have a number of site plan applications on the go. I'm not going to get into them all. I do have the hotel site coming forward shortly. I'll say that much. And then what was I going to say? Oh, dear. Maybe that was just it. That's it for now for me. Yep.
Very good. Any other business that any members of the committee wish to raise at this point?
If I could, please, and we have already talked about this, but I would like to see something definitive about when we get submissions and how far in advance of our meeting do we consider them to be valid. I don't consider what we got from the Nottawasaga at 9:29 this morning, and Susan did a great job sending it out to us immediately. I think that should have been completely ignored at this late date. So I don't know who sets these policies about how far in advance of one of our meetings, and the same thing applies, David, for the planning committee. So I think we need to settle that once and for all and say it has to be at least 1 week in advance or whatever.
We did ask for comments for the 19th. I mean, I'm not against what you're saying. The problem might be from one application to the next, where in an instance, late breaking information, good, bad, right, or wrong, has more weight for the committee undertaking it. I mean, if we get something in, and here again, it's mostly from comments from area land residents through circulation, and that sometimes those can be late breaking, and then it's a judgment call. It really is. Do we keep it because it missed the deadline, or do we forward it on? It's life in the real world, so it can be a little tricky at times.
Well,
you know.
no, David. I think there is a way of dealing with this, and I mean, you know, I asked you and Susan to think of an approach, but I'll give you one to consider as a default, and then you can try to persuade us to deviate from this. But my recommendation would be, so when we get the reports and we get the package from the town, and we are dealing with it in our own volunteer time and looking through it, making site visits and or not making site visits, and coming to grips with it and making our notes and just taking our decisions, and then something pops up, 48 or 24 hours or 8 hours or 3 hours before a meeting. That should be a matter for deferment. So it should, I submit it should be in the package, and we deal with the packages. And if someone wants to bring up something else, they might be able to do so at the meeting, but the likelihood is that it'll trigger a deferral for that material to be included again in the package to be brought to us at a subsequent meeting. So, I mean, that's a rather hard-ass way to approach it, but I think, I mean, we do try, and I know Mr. Trotman and Susan Pottle try to ensure we get those packages in a timely way with some lead time before the meeting to both get through them and do what we need to do. So why don't we respect that and use that as our cutoff time?
Okay, so if something comes in after deadline, then we will defer the application.
Well, we'll either say it's germane or it's not, and if it's sufficiently germane, then it'll need a
If it's sufficiently
deferral.
germane.
But it may not
Yeah,
it
if
may
it's
not
sufficiently
really
germane.
matter much anyway. It may just be something that's distracting us from the more substantive materials that have been sent
Right.
out in the packet.
Right.
I would not
Yeah.
support if something comes in late, that then the issue is deferred, because that just gives the possibility of somebody who wants it deferred to put in something late. John, I think your idea, our packages, and Susan delivered them herself last Friday. Once we've got that package, as far as I'm concerned, that's the material. That's it. That's what we're going to consider for any application, and that, short of something completely earth shattering that turns the whole world on its head, but I think there has to be a reasonable deadline, and people need to know that. So, Nottawasaga, give us your information by this date or forget about it.
The only thing we could do, I suppose, if and another idea would be that if we don't hear from certain agencies by such a date, we simply conditionalize it, that any conditions of agency XYZ be fulfilled as part of this. Let's just pick on a severance consent application as part of this consent. That way, if we get the week after the meeting, it still doesn't relieve the applicant of having to fill those agencies' requirements as they would have anyway, and it gets captured as a condition in my report. How's that?
That's better.
It's supposed to dismiss entirely because it could be something germane from, say, the FPO. I mean, sometimes we're waiting on that, and so it may be germane to an application. That's for me to say.
Unless we set a time and say that the package is the package. I mean, there are a limited number of commenting agencies and individuals, and they know they can just wait until the day of the meeting and then look at their files and flip something to us. And it's our problem. Well, we have to disabuse them of that notion.
Yeah, I agree with
you.
That is to tell them the package is the package, and then deal with exceptions as they may arise. But to communicate back to everybody that that was too late for consideration at this meeting might be even something to be done now for those materials that were, received today or yesterday, back to the commenters and say, well, sorry, that material could not be taken into consideration at this meeting, but we may be able to take it into consideration in subsequent discussions.
Or it'd be part of a generic condition for agency XYZ. The only other thing I might say, though, is that I don't have any control over when area residents may provide comments.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's another matter. But those are normally things that I think committee members have taken in stride quite generously because they're our fellow residents, and we understand
I
that.
will
It's the matter
plead
of
for
the public agencies who weigh in as if it really means something, and it should, but it's too late.
Well, I hope my batting average is better than 50%. I will plead for some divine intervention from above on the other matter, and if we don't get something by such a date, we'll just put a condition in, and we'll just say, we haven't heard from them yet, but agency X and Y and Z we haven't heard from. So applicant, we might get something from them, and you will have to meet any requirements of agency X, Y, and Z as a standard condition. Those come in a week later. There they are. It's in the resolution.
Add it to the file, but they haven't been shared with the Committee of Adjustment for the purpose.
It's in the recommendation and then captured by committee as part of the resolution. They don't know what agency X, Y, and Z might want, but it's in there as a generic condition. That's the only really way I think we can help, because I have no control. I mean, there could be half of NVCS stuff with COVID or flu, and I'm waiting, and they're saying, sorry, Dave, we're just not going to meet the deadline, and they're telling me that 2 days before the meeting because everyone got sick the day before that.
Well, I'm going to call you on this, Mr. Trotman, and I'm going to take the chairman's prerogative of declaring the meeting stands to be adjourned in this state of pure mud and lack of clarity as to how we're going to proceed. But we've let you know what our will is, and we're looking for a resolution. So with that said, I ask for a motion to adjourn. And note the adjournment as 8 o'clock, if you might, just so we meet our contract. There you go.
Yeah.
I'll move that to
Moved
adjourn.
by Bob Gray, seconded by Brenda. Thank you very much. Everyone have a fine evening and enjoy yourself. And if you do get to walk along Sheldon Creek at any particular point, just keep an eye out for those brookies. It's
Yeah,
really,
Bill.
it's really quite